And now, from PAX TV Studio 611, your host, Richard Thomas.
Good evening, and welcome to It's a Miracle. Tonight, we take a fresh look at a familiar topic, the power of the human spirit to overcome incredible adversity. But in each of the true stories you're about to see, the people involved received a little extra help from the most unlikely sources. We begin with a story of friendship and sacrifice that takes us back to a time and place where miracles were needed more than ever. World War II and the battle for the Philippine Islands. It was 1939 and World War II was just beginning when recent Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania high school graduate Arthur Bressi and his best friend, Billy Skinner Ayres, decided to enlist. Arthur's daughter, Barbara, remembers.
They decided to join the United States Army. And they went through basic training together. They did everything together. And after they were out of basic training, they had their choice of orders where they could go, and they decided to go the furthest place away from the coal mines they could go. So they chose the Philippines.
By April 1942, under relentless attack by Japanese forces, the Philippine Islands surrendered one by one. Arthur and Skinner were both captured and imprisoned. The two men would face nearly 4 brutal years in separate POW camps. Arthur would survive, but almost never spoke about what had happened until nearly 20 years later, on a night his daughter will never forget.
On my 16th birthday, after dinner, we got up and Mom and I cleaned up the kitchen.
And should I give it to her now?
Father went into his office and he came out and he said, "I have a gift for you."
Barbara, honey, sit down.
What is it?
I just want you to read it.
And he handed me a manuscript. I mean, I could tell he had typed it a long time before he gave it to me. And I sat there and I read it.
The Ring by Arthur A. Bressi. By all the rules, Skinner was a dead man. He was on Bataan when it fell to the Japanese in April 1942. Corregidor, where I was stationed, fell a month later. At the surrender, I grew preoccupied with my class ring. The Japanese were taking everything of value from captured Americans. They were efficient. If a soldier couldn't get his ring off, they chopped off his finger with a sword.
My father wore a Navy neckerchief around his neck. He took his class ring off and he hid it in the knot of the neckerchief, hoping that the Japanese would not find it. And they didn't.
Even while under constant guard, it was still possible to receive information about other POW soldiers.
I got some news on your friend Skinner.
Through the prisoner of war grapevine, I learned that Skinner was at Camp 1, only 6 miles from where I was held in Camp 3.
How bad is he? 0 ward.
0 ward was the last stop for prisoners so ill that death was inevitable.
I lost hope of ever seeing him again. Healthy prisoners were pressed into work details on a quota basis. I volunteered for one, not knowing where it would go, but hoping it would pass through Camp 1. It did.
Dad was suffering from every disease you can think of, malnutrition, vitamin C deficiency, but he volunteered for the detail because he wanted to find his best friend.
When the work gang arrived at Camp 1, Arthur took another chance.
Could I visit the sick side? I asked the Japanese guards. They gave me a white flag mounted on a bamboo pole and a pass. Walk slowly, they said. Carry the flag high or be shot. Carry the pass high in the other hand or be clubbed.
When he reached the fence outside Zero Ward, Arthur called for his friend.
Hey, Skinner! Skinner!
I listened while the other prisoners relayed his name. Out of the barracks, tottering slowly, painfully, came the wreckage of a human body I didn't at first recognize.
Artie?
I tried to conceal my horror. This was Skinner? When we last saw each other, Skinner packed a solid 214 pounds. His skin was now drawn tight over a skeleton that weighed 79 pounds. He was in agony from malaria, amoebic dysentery, pellagra, scurvy, and beriberi. He couldn't eat or drink because of the pain in his mouth and throat.
Hey, Artie. Skinner. Hey. It's good. It's good to see you. You doing good? You hanging in there? Yeah, man. Yeah.
My hand found its way to the knot on my neckerchief, and my fingers played with the hard lump inside. The ring.
Look, Skinner, I want to give you something.
No guards were in sight. Quickly, I unslipped the knot and passed the ring through the fence.
Maybe you can wheel and deal that for yourself. Artie, keep it, Artie. This and get yourself okay. You gotta take care of yourself, okay? Get some food and get some medicine, okay? There you go.
He wrapped bony fingers tightly around the ring and promised someday he would buy me another exactly like it. Time was up.
And so, Arthur left his dying friend, never expecting to see him again. The dramatic conclusion, when It's a Miracle continues. On her 16th birthday, Barbara Bressie received a very personal gift from her father, Arthur. It was the story of what happened when he and his best friend, Billy Skinner Ayers, enlisted in the Army at the beginning of World War II. Both men chose to fight in the Philippines, and both were eventually captured and sent to separate POW camps. Months later, when Arthur finally found his friend, Skinner was racked with disease, malnourished, and barely alive. There was only one hope, a miracle. Arthur passed him the only thing he had of value, a class ring, and the two men said goodbye. It would be the last time they'd see each other for the rest of the war.
The days and weeks that followed for Skinner contained an incredible sequence of near miracles. I learned of them only after the war. Among the Japanese guards at the Zero Ward was a middle-aged fella who displayed a prominent gold tooth at the rare intervals he smiled.
The guard took pity on his dying prisoner, and ignoring the orders of his superiors, made a friendly gesture.
He'd taken a cigarette, broken it in half, and dropped one of the halves with a match alongside the fence.
The next day, Skinner took the biggest risk of his life.
Hey!
Weighing all the odds of being caught with a valuable item against getting in return nothing at all, or at most a few more pieces of candy, he decided to trust the Japanese guard.
He offered him the ring.
He said he wanted to trade it for anything to help him.
Nanika. Ichiban?
Is it valuable?
Yes.
Oh, of great value, Skinner replied.
Nanika, please. どこでもらった?
Where did you get it? Demanded the guard.
友達.
From a friend.
Anything, please.
Quickly, the guard slipped the ring into a pocket and left. One day soon after, the guard beckoned again, dropped something, then strode off on patrol. Skinner picked up the small packet. He opened it carefully and his blood raced. Inside were sulfanilamide tablets. The guard visited again and again. Each time he brought something. One day it was a small basket of limes to combat scurvy and pellagra. Another time it was a pair of pants and a jacket. Again, bananas.
If the guard had been caught helping a prisoner, it could have cost him his life. But a bond had formed between these two men. They were no longer enemies. They were friends. And it was this small light of human kindness in the dark inhumanity of war that gave Skinner back his life.
Arigato. Arigato. Thank you.
In 1945, our United States government finally won the war against Japan. And our prisoners of war, after almost 4 years in captivity, were released.
For Arthur and the other POWs, the nightmare was finally over.
69 months after I had enlisted, I was back in Mount Carmel. I'd been home only a few hours when the doorbell rang.
Skinner, buddy, how you doing? How you doing, Artie? Good. How you doing? Oh man, it's good to see you. We're home, buddy. We're home.
That ring you gave me, it saved my life.
He said, as much as I know, I'm the only man that ever made it out of Zero Ward alive. And he said, I wanted to thank you for the sacrifice you made. And he handed my father a duplicate of the class ring.
Let's do that. Let's go.
Hey, don't lose this one. It cost me $17.50, okay?
Yeah, we made it.
Lose it? Never. It's in a special jewelry box, locked and hidden.
I finished reading the story, and I knew from that moment on that I'd never be able to look at my father the same way again. I couldn't stop crying, and my father was crying, and I held him, and I told him I loved him. And it was at that moment that he gave me the ring.
Thank you so much.
He told me that the ring was the only legacy of his life and the way he had led his life that he could give to me. And that what the ring stood for was a bond that was stronger than any blood relationship that anyone could ever have. And he told me that the ring was mine, that the legacy that went with the ring was the legacy I was supposed to pass on to my children when I had my children.
Arthur's courage, perseverance, and dedication to his friend saved Skinner's life. But it wouldn't have been possible without the incredible humanity of the mysterious Japanese guard who risked his life to help a stranger.
Dad was incredible. He gave to everyone, he loved everyone, and he lived. He lived life.
What an incredible story. Sadly, Billy Skinner Ayers passed away in 1980 and Arthur Bressie in 1989, but their legacy lives on and on. Joining us now are two people who wouldn't be alive today if it weren't for the ring. Billy Ayers' children, Bill Jr. and Mary. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Richard.
Hi, Richard.
You must be very proud of your father.
I feel that he's very special. He had a lot of character.
And hopefully he passed on a lot of the characteristics to both of us. At least we tried to emulate him in a lot of different ways.
And of course, none of it would have been possible without Arthur Bressie.
If Artie hadn't have found where he was at and gotten out on a work party to see him and then smuggle him the ring, there's no doubt in my mind, I think that my father would have died long ago.
What amazes me is with the thousands of soldiers that were there, how Artie found him. That was amazing to me.
That's a miracle right there.
That's a miracle, how he could find my father with all the soldiers.
It really is amazing, and I wish you were here to tell us more about it. I'm sure you do too.
Well, I miss him. I miss my dad very much. And I wish he was here to see his grandchildren. I know he'd be very proud of them.
As I'm sure they must be of him. Thank you both for joining us tonight and sharing your story with us. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it.
We'll be right back.